I am. My kingdom is not of this world. I was born, came into this world to testify to the truth.
Is Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ getting a sequel? It looks like it's going to stir up even more controversy than the first one. Back in 2004, the original movie was a huge deal. Will the sequel do justice to the original movie? It wasn't just any film. It was a massive hit with American evangelicals, and it did pretty well in other countries too. The movie was mostly based on the Gospel of John, but it also mixed in some Catholic traditions and even some visions from a woman named Anne Catherine Emmerich. When it came out though, it caused a big uproar because some people accused it of being anti-Semitic. Since then, Gibson's been talking about making a sequel to continue the story.
He's a very heroic character. I mean, these are what our great stories are about individuals like this.
It's no shocker that he's trying to turn this into a sort of franchise, especially when you see how popular franchises are these days compared to individual actors or directors. But the big question is, can he make another movie that'll be a hit with the same evangelical crowd that loved the first one? Now, the sequel was the first announcement with the title The Passion of the Christ Resurrection. But then, the title on IMDb was changed to The Passion of the Christ Resurrection Part 1. This was in early November 2023, and it's hinting that there might be more than one part to the sequel. Jim Caviezel, the actor who played Jesus and is coming back for the sequel, even said it could be 2 films, maybe even 3, but he thinks it's probably going to be 2. So it looks like we're in for a multi-part epic here, and if you thought the first movie was intense, just wait and see what Gibson has in store for us next. The sequel is definitely happening, and they're gearing up to start filming in the spring of 2023. Jim Caviezel, who is the star of the show, spilled the beans that the script was all ramped up by December 2020. He even went as far as to say it's going to be the biggest film in the world history.
아빠, 바꿔.
Mel Gibson isn't alone in this one. He's teamed up with Randall Wallace to work on the script. Wallace has been interested in the sequel for a while now. Back in 2016, he was already talking about how there's so much more of the story to tell.
Well, Mel, the story of Jesus, the passion was an amazing thing that he had gone out on the limb, put his own money into, done all this stuff. But that's only part of the story.
He knows the evangelical community thinks the first movie is the biggest thing to come out of Hollywood, and they're convinced the sequel will be even bigger. Now, IMDb has this film penciled for a 2024 release, but you know how things can change in the movie world. We'll have to keep an eye out for more solid release info as we get closer to filming. Jim Caviezel is definitely coming back as Jesus, which is huge. The first movie was a massive deal for him, and since then, he's been in all sorts of films and TV shows. But he's also dipped back into biblical epics with Paul, Apostle of Christ. So he's got that fresh experience under his belt. And a bunch of cast members from the original are coming back for the sequel. Maya Morgenstern is reprising her role as Mary, Jesus' mother. Francesco De Vito will be back as Peter, one of Jesus' apostles. And there's a rumor that Christo Jacob will return as John, whose gospel was the basis of the first movie. It's still up in the air whether Monica Bellucci and Rosalinda Celentano will come back as Magdalena and Satan. But we'll keep our fingers crossed. This is shaping up to be a real reunion. And with the story they're all about to tell, it's going to be one for the history book. The Passion of the Christ Resurrection seems like the next logical step. Christians believe that Jesus not only died but also came back to life. And the first movie gave us a tiny peek at the resurrected Jesus. But here's the twist, it looks like the movie won't just zoom in on the resurrection itself. Instead, it's rumored to focus on the 3 days between Jesus' death and coming back to life, a time when many Christians think Jesus went down to hell. Now, the first movie had scenes that weren't straight from the Bible, and it seems like the sequel might keep doing that. Visions from Catholic mystics like Mary and Jesus of Greda and Anne Catherine Emmerich inspired some of these scenes. Emmerich's vision of Jesus descended into hell and basically declaring war on the devil is a big one. This event is known as the harrowing of hell. And while it's only hinted in a few Bible verses, it's caused quite a bit of debate among Christians. If Gibson decides to go all in on this story, he might have a tougher time getting everyone on board, especially the evangelicals who loved the first movie. Jim Caviezel, who played Jesus in the original, is super excited about the sequel. He's calling it the biggest film in the world history. The first movie was a massive hit, making over $620 million at the box office, and it became this huge cultural thing, but it also got criticized for being too violent, for some historical and biblical inaccuracies, and for possibly being anti-Semitic. Gibson and writer Randall Wallace have been working on the sequel idea since 2016, and there's been talk about Caviezel coming back. In fact, just recently, Wallace said they're still discussing the sequel. Caviezel has even read Gibson's third script draft and is confident that this movie is going to be something really special. Gibson's taking this time with his project, and it's clear he wants to make sure it's as epic as possible. So, while there's still a lot of mystery around what the sequel will actually show, one thing's for sure, it's going to be a huge deal when it finally comes out. The critics weren't exactly throwing the party of the Passion of the Christ. A lot of them brought up the controversies we've talked about, but you know, some folks did think the movie was pretty powerful. It even got nominated for 3 Oscars, and obviously, it found its audience at the box office. Whether those same people would show up in droves 16 years later is anyone's guess, even with Caviezel's hype about the script. The world has changed a lot since 2004. People are genuinely okay with more violence and intense stuff in movies these days. But at the same time, they're not as forgiving when it comes to stuff that might seem offensive or insensitive. It's tough to predict how The Passion of the Christ would be received if it came out today. And then there's Mel Gibson. Man, he's become Hollywood's poster child for controversies with his arrest and those racist and anti-Semitic remarks. Even though his last movie, Hacksaw Ridge, did well with Oscar nominations and wins, the industry isn't exactly lining up to welcome him back with open arms. Caviezel's been chatting about the sequel, and he thinks it might be split into a couple of movies.
A movie about Jesus. So they sent me a script called Mavericks that they're actually considering doing, and the script wasn't that good.
He's been talking to Gibson, and they're thinking it could be 2 films, maybe even 3.
For 15 years, as I got to know him, that he had 15 years that he felt in his heart that God was calling him to make this movie, and he knew what would happen if he did this movie.
In a recent chat, Oscar winner Mel Gibson had some exciting updates about The Passion of the Christ too. He confirmed that the long-awaited sequel to his 2004 biblical drama is finally coming soon. When asked why the project took nearly a decade to develop, Gibson explained that the sequel is such a massive undertaking that you can't do it lightly and quickly.
And believe me, I did a lot of research on it. And according to all the research, it was way worse than anything I showed you.
Gibson also mentioned that he currently has 2 scripts of the project, which he's been co-writing with Randall Wallace.
But he said, look, we can't do it for money, we can't do it for prestige, we can't do it for anything except to tell the truth as we know it. And that made it beautiful from the beginning. It's like, okay, whatever our flaws are, however we might fail, if we succeed, it's because we're telling God's story, not because we're telling our own.
Now, The Passion of the Christ from 2004 was a film that really stirred up emotions and conversations about the final hours of Jesus Christ, but not everyone is on the same page when it comes to these kind of films. The Orthodox Church, for example, has some strong reason for not giving much importance to them. First, the Passion and the Cross of Christ are deeply connected to the resurrection. If you separate them, you're missing out on the full picture. It is like telling half a story and expecting the same impact. The Church believes that showing the Passion and the Cross without the resurrection does not fully express the Church's experience of these events. Secondly, while the cross and resurrection are historical events, they are also mythical and deeply personal experiences. These events transform believers through repentance, Orthodox asceticism, and the sacramental life. It's not just about what you see, it's about how it changes you from the inside out. So, it's not about aesthetic or just watching the movie, it's about the spiritual journey. Thirdly, the Church reminds us of the Passion, the Cross, and the resurrection every year. Not just to make us feel something or to remember these events, but to encourage us to participate personally in them. It's about experiencing a transformation, a co-crucifixion, and a co-resurrection with Christ. The goal is not just to watch and remember, but to be transformed. What are your expectations from the movie? Let us know in the comments below. Hit the like button and subscribe for more. Until next time,